everyone. Welcome to the 300th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. Yay! It is me, your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have an episode that features you, our listeners. It is our annual holiday episode where we take our calls that we get throughout the year that we have not answered, and we try to answer some of them. So hopefully, even if you left your question way back in April, March, you might hear it today. So thank you for helping us produce this holiday episode. So, Kevin, I guess we should get started with our first question. Or do you have anything to say woohoo, 300 shows?
Other than the woohoo, it's interesting the trend of questions that we get. So many of them focus on smart things far away from the house, but still on your property. And I know that that's where we're going to start.
Yes. The first chunk of questions all fall into that category. It's kind of or not quite within Wi-Fi range. What do I do? So we're going to kick it off with a question from Dave from Michigan. Let's hear it.
Hi, Kevin and Stacey. Dave from Michigan here. Got a long driveway and working at home now. I kind of would like to know when deliveries are coming down the driveway because I've been surprised a few times with the delivery man showing up kind of unexpected. Would like it to not have to integrate with any system, but have that capability if I wanted to do that in the future, something that might link up with IFT or something like that. Thank you.
Dave, you are not the first, nor the only, nor will you be the last person to ask us this. And I got nothing for you. Unless I wanted to be able to say, and I spent a long time looking at LoRaWAN solutions, because that is a long-range, low-power radio that would be perfect for something like this. And then you could decide, do you want a PIR? Do you want some other type of sensor to measure when someone drives onto your property? The problem is everything is so bespoke. You're going to have to grab yourself a Raspberry Pi, put a LoRa hat on it. Oh, no, it's not a hat for a Pi. What is it? No, it is a hat.
It is a hat. Yeah.
It is a hat. Okay, I was thinking of a shield for an Arduino. But for your sensor, you're going to have to get yourself an Arduino and a shield and radios. And you can do it. I don't think it's what you probably want to do. And especially because you're thinking about down the road integrating it with other systems.
I think it's the right solution. It's just not the right time yet for that solution because it's so early on.
It is. But we think, Laura's not helping us out here, but Amazon Sidewalk, this is exactly what Amazon wants to do with their Sidewalk network. And you know what? They've got a Semtech LoRa chip inside. That's what their Sidewalk stuff is going to run on. It's just going to have its own proprietary protocol on top of that radio. And so what you're going to see, I think, is Amazon come out with their own brand of probably Ring-based stuff. So, eventually you'll be able to get a Ring driveway monitor for people who've got this problem. And that may or may not make you happy. I don't know.
That's probably the best bet in the near term, unfortunately.
And that's still going to be a year out.
Yeah. And also, it's also going to be works with Amazon Sidewalk and very, as you said, proprietary. So I'm still hoping that 2021 brings actual more open LoRaWAN solutions and products.
Yeah. And the sensors are out there. The LoRaWAN routers are out there that attach so you can build a network around your home. What's not out there is the software that makes it easy for people to use. And that's what we're waiting for. So, hey, if you're out there and you're building a LoRaWAN network and you want consumers to put stuff on their property, make your software nice and easy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping with the outside theme, we've got a question from Ed that is near and dear to my own heart. Let's hear from Ed.
Stacey and Kevin, this is Ed from Kentucky. My question for the podcast is, I was using PlantLink sensors for my garden. Of course, Scott bought PlantLink and then scrapped it. So now I'm looking for a replacement. Prefer something that's Wi-Fi, but I'm Bluetooth. I'm not opposed to either. I do have some distance. It's about probably 100 yards from my garden sits about 100 yards from my Wi-Fi router. But just looking for any options out there, particularly stuff that maybe integrates with things like SmartThings or Amazon Echo. That would be great.
I remember the plant leak sensors and I liked them. And yes, Scott actually now, I think they didn't just shut Plant Link down. They kind of incorporated it into their own thing. But I understand that people are not excited about it. There is a subscription tied to that. So I have been using a lot of Bluetooth plant sensors, but I use those inside, not outside. For outside, there are a wide range of sensors that are not connected to anything. And then there are plenty of weather-resistant Bluetooth sensors, including the Bluetooth sensor I like to use inside my own houseplants. It was on our gift guide. It's from Olivan. But again, that's something you're going to have to be proactive about checking, and most people aren't excited about that. So what I have found for you is the EcoWit Wi-Fi outdoor weather and plant devices. Really, this is not ideal because it's not designed for plants. There's not a database in there, but there is a soil moisture sensor and a weather sensor. So you can use it to track moisture. You're not going to be able to track fertility or anything like that of the soil. And you are going to have to buy a hub because Wi-Fi is such a battery hog. Most of these devices are going to speak some sort of proprietary protocol that speaks to a hub and then talks to your Wi-Fi network. So the EcoWit hub is $36 and the plant sensor is around $17. And you can buy the plant sensor, but you have to buy the hub with it. Or if you want to just be super proactive and get more data, you can do the Olivan sensor and stick it in the ground wherever you want and just go check it.
So while that's going to handle all the sensors for the plants, he's 100 yards away from his Wi-Fi router. So he's going to need something else to make this connection.
Yes. And this is the answer you're going to hear from us for the next question too. So I was trying to think of like, hey, if we can't do LoRaWAN, what can we do? And the answer is we can stick a Wi-Fi extender outside. So some ways to do that are to go to a mesh network and buy mesh routers that have an outside capable mesh unit access point. And
right, weatherized and so on.
Yeah. And you're looking for something that's like, I would say IP65 at least. And Unify, so Ubiquiti, everybody loves their stuff. They're very fancy routers, but they're really good. And they're going to let you, if you have a lot of devices on your network, they are awesome. Because you can see the devices, you can control the devices, you can do a lot of security things. These are very high-powered mesh Wi-Fi points. You can buy a $99 Unify mesh access point that is outdoor capable and plug that in somewhere on the outside of your house, and voila, you have extended your Wi-Fi network further into your yard. Hopefully it's far enough. If it's not, I'm like, I guess you could plug it into an extension cord and put an enclosure in the ground and pop it in there. Make sure your enclosure is plastic, not metal. And I don't know what else to say about that. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, we did find a bunch of outdoor options. Some of them are really geared for like commercial or industrial. So that it's not like this is a unique problem, extending Wi-Fi, but it gets tricky on the consumer side because you've got to get power out to this thing. Some of them do support power over Ethernet, but
then you've got to get Ethernet over to
then
it.
You got to get Ethernet in the ground. So yeah, it's kind of tricky. So I'm thinking what you've recommended is probably the best possible option for the least amount of cost.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, and plus once you have Wi-Fi the further out you can extend your Wi-Fi, the cooler your world is going to be, right? Yes. Okay. Keep all this in mind for hearing our next question, which is from David, who is from Pennsylvania. And yeah, he's looking for something outdoors as well. Let's hear it.
Hi, guys. This is David K. from Pennsylvania. Love the show. I had a quick question about connecting some sort of door sensor for my backyard shed. It's about 40 to 50 feet from the back wall of the house, and I've tried using Z-Wave door sensors and things like that, but it appears that distance must be just too much. So trying to figure out what might be an option to put some sort of door open sensor on the shed. And there's no power out there, unfortunately, either. So if you have any ideas or anything that might work, I'd be very interested. Thanks.
All right, David, your Wi-Fi may actually extend. Your home Wi-Fi may extend this far. But if it doesn't, see our previous answer to Ed. But if it can extend, really what you're looking for is, we're using Wi-Fi here to help you, but you're going to need a Wi-Fi based sensor. And you're probably going to want it to be kind of weather rated. It's unclear how your shed is configured. If you put it on the inside of your shed, you probably don't have to worry about that, and it would still track open close. So think about that. I have found a couple Wi-Fi sensors. The thing you're going to find with Wi-Fi sensors is that they're going to go through battery faster, right? So you're looking at like 6 months battery life. If you're outside in Pennsylvania in the winter, it's going to drain the battery faster. But there is a brand called Koogeek, Koogeek, that actually makes some really good Wi-Fi sensors. I've used them. They're pretty good. I will note that when you're using something like this, you might see a bit of a delay in getting a notification from like a Madam A or something like that. But these are actually really high quality sensors. I've used them. They work well. They integrate with Madam A. I don't know of any HomeKit compatible Wi-Fi sensors. Eve makes some that are Bluetooth based, but I don't think that's going to help you this far out. You could try to pull something to be a hub further out into the yard, again in an enclosure, but I think you're getting kind of into some dicey territory
exactly.
there.
Yeah, I think the missing piece here, and I'm not suggesting that he changed this, is that there's no power in the shed. Because if there was power in the shed and the Wi-Fi reached out there, or a mesh access point could be put out there, he could actually do it with Z-Wave or Bluetooth sensors, which won't use as much battery, but then he would have a hub running in the shed to get that data onto the network.
Which seems like a lot. So a $20 Koogeek sensor, hopefully if your Wi-Fi extends that far, you won't have to do anything else. But if you do have to do something else, you can look for, and you could also just add another mesh access point that's closer to that wall inside of the house. You could try that as well.
We don't even know if he has a mesh network right now, and that may make a huge difference right there.
Yes. And if you're upgrading your network, look for one that has an outdoor access point, and then poof, magic. Or just physics. Okay, so I was going to say that's all of our outdoor stuff, but there's one more outdoor question. This is from a caller in Milwaukee who is looking for a camera that's going to be far away. So let's hear him.
Hey, Kevin, I'm Stacy. Sorry, from Milwaukee. I'm looking for a camera that I want to be about 75 to 100 feet from my house. It could have Wi-Fi, it cannot. But the key thing, I want something that can stay there for a while, recording, without needing to be plugged in to electricity. So something that lasts a long time on battery.
So that's a good question. We actually did test a couple cameras, at least the range of some cameras. I had much better luck than Stacy did, so I'm going to go first because I think it's the more viable option.
And cheaper.
Cheaper. I'm going to say we can't answer this with any certainty because network range and bandwidth really depends on so many external and environmental factors. But let me explain what I tested and how I tested it, and let's see if this will work for you. I'm recommending the Wise Cam Outdoor Cam Starter Pack. And that comes with one outdoor camera, runs on a battery, a rechargeable battery, that is, and a base station. And the base station connects to your home network over Ethernet, but the camera connects to the base station over a sub-gigahertz network, and it's going to have much more range because of that. So it's not Wi-Fi, but it gets it onto your Wi-Fi network. I tested this in my backyard. It's an open field, and I was able to view and capture footage from well over 100 feet. Now, my base station, which the camera connects to directly, that was in my backyard window. So that's the best case circumstance. No trees in the way, closest base station to camera, etc. Wise says you can get up to 300 feet of range, but that's in an open field. That's like super best case. So when I took the camera to the front of my house, where the signal from the camera had to go all the way through my house and 50 feet to that backyard window where the base station is, I only got about half the range. So roughly 50 feet, 60 feet maybe. Here's what I would say. If you know that you can put your base station, a Wise base station, near where the outdoor camera is going to be, I say go for it, because you're talking about a $49.99 plus shipping investment. And if you buy it directly from Wise, they do offer a 30-day return policy. So you could just test it out. I mean, I don't recommend you just buy things, test them, and send them back. But in this particular case, I would give that a go.
Okay. And I took my Arlo cameras out because I love them and think they're really awesome cameras, actually. They are outdoor rated. They're wireless. They are battery powered. They actually have a base station also. So I have a base station that is not tied directly to my Wi-Fi network. And this is what allows you to get further out once again. And they're actually pretty good on the battery, but you can set the recording time, but you can only set the recording time to max out at 5 minutes. So how they work by default is when they detect motion, they start recording, and I think it's like for 20 or 12 seconds. I mean, it's not a lot. And that's how you're going to max out your battery life. But it sounds like you want to record a little bit longer. So this may work for you in that case. I do think you're going to run through the batteries a lot, and they're not cheap batteries. They do have rechargeable batteries, and there's a variety of Arlo cameras with different features. So you should look at that, but it's going to be a way more expensive option than Kevin's.
I'm so glad you mentioned the time of recording, because the Wise outdoor cams actually only record 12 seconds.
That's it? You can't adjust it longer?
You cannot, unless you do their Cam Plus subscription service. It's $1.25 a month when billed annually. You have unlimited event video length at that point in time. You also gain a ton of extra features, such as person detection, facial recognition, package detection, pet detection, vehicle detection. Those are all coming soon. You don't get those yet, but they're coming soon. So it's probably worth the extra price if you want to record more than 12 seconds. And that's a personal choice. And you could use the subscription for just 1 month, try it. And if you don't need more than 12 seconds, you think, you just don't renew it. That's fine. But if you do, I don't think that's too much of a price to pay.
Arlo also has subscriptions, and you get 7 days of free cloud recording, which is actually really good, I think. If you want to go for more than that, and you will also get person, package, animal, etc. detection, there are actually a bunch of different subscription plans. It's almost confusing to me. It also changes the resolution of so at the highest subscription, you're going to get 4K resolution. At the lowest, you're going to get 1080p. So there's a resolution, there's a length of storage, and then there's, at the fancy end, you'll get image, even smoke detection. You can set cloud-based activity zones where it matters. I would also say to Dave from Michigan with the question about his driveway, an Arlo, depending on how long the driveway is, might work there for you, because then you could set that up for notifications when someone enters and see who they are. If you did the subscription, you could definitely do vehicle recognition. So it wouldn't trigger for like plants blowing in the area. And I think that would actually be worthwhile, because otherwise you're going to get a lot of false positives probably, depending on the foliage around your driveway. So that's actually a thought for you too. It's an expensive thought, but it's a good thought. Okay. I think it's time to go indoors, because this is another area where we get lots of questions. And I don't blame y'all, because your network is the most important part of your smart home, because without it, you got nothing. So we got a lot of questions about Wi-Fi. How should we think about it? How should we evaluate it? No one is asking why we want it. So that's great. I remember trying to make the case for Wi-Fi to someone back in like 2006, and they were just like,
And now we can't live without it.
I know. I'm like, they're like, well, my computer's at my desk. I'm like, but it doesn't have to be. You could get a laptop. They were like, that's expensive. Anyway, let's talk about Wi-Fi. We have a question starting with Justin. Let's hear it.
Hi, Stacey and Kevin. This is Justin from Virginia. I have a 3 TP-Link on-hub router set up in a mesh configuration with Ethernet backhaul. I'm looking to upgrade as my current Wi-Fi is not reliable despite excellent coverage. Some devices will lose their internet connections while maintaining a Wi-Fi connection and have to manually reset those devices to restore their internet connectivity. I regularly have 40-plus devices on my network, and I think that might be too much for the on-hubs. I'd like to get a Wi-Fi 6 system to future-proof myself some, maximize my gigabit internet connection, and accommodate all of my devices. But I'm finding it very difficult to compare Wi-Fi speed and device connection support between systems. I've seen mesh systems advertised anywhere between 25 and 60-plus devices supported, but most are silent on the matter. I'm interested in getting your thoughts on the best way to evaluate mesh Wi-Fi or multi-access point systems, or if you have any specific router recommendations for a smart home that has a ton of devices connected.
Okay, Justin. So right off the bat, I actually had a TP-Link on-hub router as well. I bought it when it came out, and I think that was about 5 years ago. So it's time to upgrade.
Wow.
It's time to upgrade. That was the very first Google router for mesh. And yeah, it's time to upgrade. And as we always say, if you're going to upgrade at this point on the router side, try and get one with Wi-Fi 6. And I recently reviewed the Eero 6 Pro, which is Wi-Fi 6. And even my older Wi-Fi 5 devices saw an uptick in speed. So definitely something to consider. You actually raise a really good question, though. And that is how many devices were on your network, and a lot of the mesh systems kind of tell you how many they support, how many devices, but some don't. So we did some research. And to be honest, maybe since you've asked this, they've come a little more clean on this, because here's what I found out. So the Eero 6 that I just reviewed, they say and these are all official support responses that I'm going to give you now, that the Eero 6 has enough bandwidth to deliver high speeds to over 75 connected devices. They're saying high speeds. They actually support more devices. So if you have devices that don't really send a lot of, maybe video
like
content.
that Wi-Fi sensor.
Yeah, exactly. One Eero can support up to 128 devices. So that's something to consider on the Eero side. The new Nest Wi-Fi routers, which are 2 or 3 iterations newer than the TP-Links, Google says one of their Wi-Fi points is strong enough to handle up to 200 connected devices. And then I looked also at Orbeez. Orbeez can support up to 250 clients, they say, under most conditions. And lastly, TP-Link, because you had started this conversation with TP-Link, their newest routers with Wi-Fi 6, they can handle up to 150 devices with strong and reliable Wi-Fi, so they say. So at this point, just getting an upgrade to a recent, particularly a Wi-Fi 6 router, I don't think you're going to have device issues in terms of how many devices are in your home.
Got it. And then the other question that Justin asked was about just the things that you look for when you're evaluating a mesh Wi-Fi system. So devices supported is one. Wi-Fi 6 support is another. A lot of them, especially at Wi-Fi 6, they're going to be talking about like MIMO and the number of antennas that they're going to have. I wouldn't necessarily focus so much on that, but I would focus on the throughput of the device. So the cheaper your router, generally, the slower the throughput. So it might support like a gig, or it might support 720 megabits per second. So that's another thing to start to look and think about. The final thing I would say about evaluating a mesh Wi-Fi system is actually the software. How easy is it to install and use? That's hard to do without actually buying the router. So I don't know but you can read reviews about that sort of thing.
I would add also, along the software side, what are the features that you might want in your router?
And do they charge a subscription for it?
Exactly, because some of the features that you might want, maybe like parental controls to turn off all social media throughput for an hour. Can you do that? Do you want to do that? Do you have to pay to do that? So, and real quick about your bandwidth point, which is a very good one, Stacy. That also relates to how many bands that these routers support. And I say that because yes, there's 2.5 gigahertz band. Yes, there's 5 gigahertz band, but some routers have dual, say 5 gigahertz bands. And one of those is reserved just for the mesh points to talk to each other. And if they have a very fast dedicated band, it's almost as fast as having wired connections between those routers.
Yes. And that is awesome. All right. Another Wi-Fi question for us. This one is from Jaron, who is from Wisconsin. And let's hear it.
Hi, Stacey and Kevin. This is Jaron calling from Wisconsin. I know that on routers you can see what devices are connected. Is there a way to tie in if your phone is connected to the network into any automations, say temperature or lighting, so that if all of the phones in our household were not connected, or if they all were connected, that something would be automated with that? Thank you very much, household, if that makes sense.
So that's a good question. I scratch my head because I know what you're trying to do here. And it makes sense, Jaron, that your router knows that a phone is connected to the network. But the routers these days they're not doubling as like smart home hubs for the most part. There might be some, that have some advanced features, but it's really not the same. So I kind of rely mostly on GPS and geofencing for this type of thing, because a router is not going to be able to say, okay, Susie's on the network and it knows that, but now what do I do? It can't send any information to a device to flip on lights or anything. That's just not a product yet. I wouldn't be surprised if that comes to routers in the future. I know some, like the Almond router in the past, have had this as well. But what you could do is look at what devices do use geofencing. And you're an Amazon household, you said. You can't do this in the Madam A app, but if you have works with Amazon thermostat, it likely has a home and away mode that you can use the phone's location to turn on or turn off. So that's a possibility. And I know that the Nest, the EcoBeast, they all have this. It's not what you're looking to do. It's going to solve your problem. It's just going to do it a different way. And that's probably the best thing I could say about that. However, if you wanted to try a do-it-yourself hub, which I have done before with like Raspberry Pis, use Home Assistant, Homebridge, those software systems typically do have like a presence detection that says so-and-so is on the network. And because of that, fire off a trigger to go do this, turn this light on, make this door lock open, etc. That's not something you're going to buy off the street. It's something you're going to put together yourself. So if that's not your thing, I would stay away from it, but it is possible to do it with one of those.
Yes. And I used to do this with IFT and my Android device. So when I ran IFT on my Android device, and when my Android device hit my home Wi-Fi network, things would happen. And it was nice because, GPS, you don't want to unlock your front door when you're still a mile away, right? And sometimes GPS is just not exact. There's also an Android app that is called Tasker, and that can actually trigger things to happen when you get on your home Wi-Fi. But again, that's Android. So if you are on iPhone, which more people are on than Android in the US, I don't know what to tell you other than GPS is where you're at or working with your individual hubs.
Ray, we even checked on HomeKit if it's possible to say, hey, this iPhone is on the network now, go do something. It's not there. It doesn't support that. It does it through GPS.
It's not there yet, but maybe. I think this is a really compelling use case, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, we've got just some really easy answers for people. I love this part when people are like, does this exist? And we're like, yes, it does. And here's what it's called and where you can find it. First up is a question from Dan, who's looking for bright light bulbs. Let's hear it.
Hey, Kevin and Stacy, it's Dan from Indianapolis. I have a number of smart switches and bulbs in my home and trying to retrofit some bulbs and so forth that it's not easy or feasible because of older parents and so forth to do the whole switch replacement thing. They have some very high lumen bulbs. One's by Philips. Here's an LED lumen bulb that goes up to 2200 lumens. They have another one I saw around here for 1500 or 2, which is quite a bit brighter than the typical 800 lumens you would get with a 60 watt LED. My question is, and because I'm trying to make things a little easier so we're not leaving lights on all everywhere and they just turn off. Do you know any brands? I know Cenacle, I saw Cenacle makes one. Try to avoid a lot of the aftermarket LED, Chinese weird companies, because I don't want to have a whole bunch of apps, and two, it's just I've found it easier to focus on name brand products. And the Cenacle one actually requires a Zigbee hub as well, which isn't my preferred method, but I think that one goes up to 1500 lumens. But I just wondered if you know of any higher lumen bulbs that are Wi-Fi enabled and or smart controllable and or dimmable.
Dan, you're right. Philips Hue does make a light bulb that is not tunable. People hate it because it's not tunable, but it is just a white light bulb. It's 3000K, so that's in the warmer end of the spectrum, but still nice. I have two of them actually, and they're at 1600 lumens. Woo! I put them in because Seattle, it's dark. It's just dark. And I do wish, I'll be honest, especially because I'm starting to play with HomeKit's adaptive lighting. I'm like, ooh, if these were tunable, it'd be so awesome. But I'm bearing with it. The other option is Senglid. You mentioned this in your email. I can tell you that Senglid is a legit brand, and they have an extra bright daylight bulb. So I would say for you, please check out Senglid, or you can check out the Philips Hues. The Philips Hues are nice because they're Bluetooth and they can tie into Amazon or Google without you needing the app if you don't want to. If you want to do like fun things with it, yes, you will need the app. But those are two really good options for you. Okay, and next up is another question about lights. This wouldn't be a show featuring me if we didn't talk about lights. All right, this question's from Alexander.
Hi, Stacy and Kevin. This is Alexander from Iowa. Love the show. My question is around traveling and local control of smart devices. Specifically, my wife and I have grown accustomed to a routine that dims our bedroom lights over the course of 30 minutes from 100% down to off. Curious if there's a light we can take on the road with us when we visit hotels or family that can achieve the same effect using an iPhone and Bluetooth. I also bring an Echo Auto with me so I can achieve voice control without having to reconfigure Wi-Fi credentials or open up an app to use Alexa on my iPhone. Thanks.
Alexander, I bet you're not traveling as much anymore, but after the pandemic is done, I have some lovely options for you, and they range in price. So the fanciest, nicest, swankiest version of a sunrise sunset lamp. It's the Philips Hue Smart Sleep, and then they have a sleep and wake up light therapy lamp. And that is $155, which is a lot, but it has a clock, it has a radio, it does sunrise, sunset, it's just fancy. You don't need all that probably. Philips also has a lower cost version that is just called the Philips Wake Up Light, and that has both sunrise, sunset, it has an alarm clock on it. It's actually probably more my favorite from the looks perspective. It has backup power and it's very travel friendly. It's about $120 to $130. There is also a really cheap version called the Home Labs Sunrise Alarm Clock that also has wake up and dimming. Another option is the Casper Glow Light, which I really love. I love it because it's USB powered. It only uses Bluetooth. So if you want it to dim and do the sunrise sunset stuff, you're going to have to use the app on your phone and tell it what time to dim and wake. But it's also just a really nice light, especially for travel, because when you pick it up, you can actually have it function as a night light and you can walk around your strange settings with it. Right now, it is out of stock in the single version. I paid $100 for my Casper Glow Light, which was kind of fancy. Right now, having the doubles, you can buy two, one for each bedside table, I guess. And that is $229, which is a lot. It's a very fancy lamp, but it's very fun to use. It's super practical, USB powered, and really intuitive, and it's actually really well sized for travel. And let's move on to another question, this one from Danny. Let's hear it.
Hi, Stacy, Kevin. Curious, do you guys know of any hidden door sensors? I'm looking for a sensor for my front door. I just put a new one in. I'd like to see if you know of any that would be more hidden versus having to put them on the outside the door. Protocol is not as important to me, like what it is. I'm more just wondering if you know of any.
All right, Danny, this actually is pretty easy to solve as long as you purchase a hidden Z-Wave door sensor, or a hidden sensor. They do make them. AOTech makes one. It's about $28. It detects if your door is open or closed. You're going to drill into the frame of your door, the door frame itself, and you recess this sensor inside. You put a battery in there. The battery's good for 2 years. And that's going to tell, hopefully you have a Z-Wave hub in your house, but that's going to tell you if the door is open or closed. You could even do just a standard magnetic door window sensor on the inside of the door. Nobody's going to see that. One piece fits on the door frame, another piece fits on the door itself. And when the two magnets or the two pieces are close enough, it knows that the door is closed. I know that those are relatively inexpensive, $20 or $30. Again, they typically require some type of hub solution, so I'm just going to mention that as well. But nobody from the outside is going to see that.
You may see that there is GE makes a hinge sensor. It's a Z-Wave based hinge sensor. And I got very excited about it about 3 years ago. I installed it and I was very disappointed. So I'm going to recommend that if you see that and are tempted, I found that it did not do a good job registering when the door was actually open, which is kind of the point. So the internal magnet-based sensors, probably better. All right. And to wrap this show up, because it is about time, we have our final question from Jason in Ontario. He wants to understand the future of hubs.
Hi, Stacey and Kevin. This is Jason from Brantford, Ontario, Canada. I have a SmartThings hub and a Wink hub, and I'm worried about what hub I may have next. Recently, I watched a video on YouTube that pointed out declining stock levels in Samsung SmartThings products, leading me to wonder what is next. My question for you is, are consumer hubs a viable product, or should I be looking at going out and purchasing a Raspberry Pi to roll my own? Sure, consumer hubs are great because they're easy, but are they worth the e-waste?
All right, Jason, I think in the long term, hubs are probably going away, right? Yes, Wink still exists. SmartThings still exists. SmartThings has been focusing less on their hub and physical hardware and more on their software. So what we're going to see is, I don't know the right word, but we're going to see less focus on hardware. And I think eventually SmartThings is not going to be making a hub. Now that will be far off into the future. Well, maybe not that far, like maybe a year or two into the future, but they will continue to support their hubs. I think they're just trying to install their software in more other devices. And that makes sense because no one wants to buy a dedicated hub. They just want some software that makes everything run. So it might be part of a router, might be part of a smart television. And that's kind of where that's going.
Yeah, but I appreciate having like the central brain of my smart home in a dedicated piece of hardware, especially when it has typically multiple radios other than Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And that's the one thing that does worry me about like a software-based hub system. But as you said, the support for, say, SmartThings isn't going away. Wink, we used to recommend. We don't recommend that anymore because the company has just been, struggling to stay alive from what we can see. There's still the Hubitat Elevation Hub, which we reviewed in the past. The initial version that I had only had Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and they included where you could purchase a Z-Wave dongle. You don't need the dongle anymore. The new version 2 hub has Z-Wave built in. So that's a viable option as well. I don't find it as intuitive to use as Samsung SmartThings, but that's just me personally. Now, as far as rolling your own system with a Raspberry Pi, oh boy. Right off the bat, it's gonna take time. You may get frustrated. Maybe you're highly technical and you won't be frustrated. But I actually kind of recommend you do it because for $35, you get a Raspberry Pi. It has Bluetooth. It has Wi-Fi. You can add an optional USB stick for a small cost to do Zigbee or Z-Wave. And then you've got choices of software, Home Assistant, Homebridge, OpenHab. Many of these are open source. That's good and bad because the good side, if you know what you're looking at, you can review the code. You can write your own code to handle a device that maybe isn't supported, for example. The downside is if you can't do that, you're waiting on the community of people that contribute freely to the software to decide if they're going to support your device and then actually write it, test it, and so on and so forth. So, I still think it's worth it. I mean,
yes. I was like, I'm going to endorse this too. And I don't even code, but I did an OpenHab installation and now I'm working with Homebridge. And there's so much power in these platforms that you don't like. You can see sensors that maybe the vendors didn't want you to see in their devices. You can also really customize things. It's almost too much customization. I will say that I have spent literally hours trying to figure out the optimal setting for all of my lights when I walk in the door during the winter, which, no one really actually needs to do.
It definitely adds complexity. It adds customization power. And even some of these systems, going back to one of our original questions earlier in the show, can see what devices are connected on the network. And therefore, you could do trigger events because you have that data and now you have a fully open system that you can just do whatever you want with. So it's really up to you. If you already have a hub, then stick with what you have, I guess. But, for some time, effort, and $35, I say get the Pi and go for it.
Yeah. And some of these, you no longer need to buy a Pi. They actually have they're not servers. They're just you can buy the Pi in an enclosure that already has the software on it. So that's like Homebridge out of the box that we were talking about a couple weeks ago on the show. You can buy a OpenHAB, like a Pi with OpenHAB already installed on it, or some of these you can just buy an SD card that you'll pop into the Pi. So
you're going to pay more.
Yes.
But you'll be less frustrated. And to me, it's a learning opportunity to play with Linux a little bit and get out of your comfort zone. But those are totally viable solutions.
Yeah. I just my whole body went dead inside when he said play with Linux. I was like, ugh! I will pay the $100 for the box that has everything, or the $25 for the SD card that already has everything installed. So take a look at that. It's not as scary as you might think. And you don't have to play with Linux if you don't want to. All right. Well, y'all, thanks for listening. Thanks for participating in the show. And thank you so much for supporting us through 300 episodes. I'll tell you, there have actually been more, but that was when Kevin and I were at GigaOM. And all of those episodes are now lost. They're lost in the annals of time.
I can't believe that we have had such support for this many shows, quite honestly. When we first started doing this through Stacy on IoT, I don't know that I thought we'd get to 300.
Yeah.
I really didn't.
We have been doing this for almost 5 years now. No, more than 5 years now that I think about it. Y'all, thank you so much for being with us on this journey. This is the greatest gift for us, that we get to do something we love, and hopefully we help y'all too.
We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
And if you have questions, we answer one every single show, and you can call us. And many months when you call us, you will also be entered to win a prize. The December prize, still good for another week or so, is a smart speaker, one of the $99 Echo, Apple, or Google smart speakers of your choice. And you just need to call us at 512-623-7424. And if you would like more IoT news, please sign up for the Stacy on IoT newsletter at www.stacyoniot.com. Thanks, everyone. That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.